Hello, in this lecture we're going to be talking about the Persians and the Greeks and picking up from the Persian lecture. And we're going to be talking about various aspects of it and kind of give you an overview of Persian and Greek relations. And then we're going to be talking in the next lecture about Alexander the Great and Philip II of Macedonia and Alexander the Great. So first, the Persian Empire of the 5th century BC was far the mightiest in the world, as we talked about. It was so large. And a handful of the Greek city-states were they had gifted generals and a unique Greece geography, but it really appealed to the Persians to army to really beat and crush them. Culturally, the victory of Athens ushers in the golden age of art and architecture and the political seed of Greek unity that results from this attack from the Persians. But also, it brings the seeds of discord and pity and problems that happened after the alliance falls between Athens and Sparta. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about Greece, as I had already mentioned when we talked about about Persia. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about Persia. As I talked about Persia, Persia was the largest, richest, and most culturally sophisticated and most powerful state that had been seen in the ancient world. It comprised of dozens of languages and ethnic groups and cultures, and all the states of Greece put together was only 1 to 2% of the territory of Persia. And similarly with population and military resources. And this empire was organized, remember, in satrapies under the governance of satraps. And each satrap was like a local king and collected taxes and commanding armies and living in luxurious palaces. And the weakness of this empire was that there's frequent revolts of subjugated people and frequent civil wars that brought different candidates to the throne. And so we're going to first start with understanding the rise of the Battle of Marathon. So in 499 BCE, the King of Kings, Darius of Behestan, as we had briefly talked about them, he really wanted to go after the Ionian states of Asia Minor that was recently conquered by Persia, and probably encouraged by the ideas of the rationalists. They rose to revolt, appealing to cities of the mainland Greece for help. And most of the Greeks refused to help, but Athens sent 20 ships to help the Ionians. And Darius eventually was brought in his army and suppressed the rebellion and resisted the order. However, Darius became aware of Athens, and the assistance Athens had provided to the revolutionaries. It's important to note that Sparta doesn't help, and it's seen as a great shame. The Persian forces end up landing on mainland Greece in 490 BCE and encamped on an open stretch of land near Athens, and this is the plain of Marathon. The Athenians realized that they needed help and sent a runner to Sparta. And the Spartans were very isolationist, as we had talked about in previous class. And they made their excuses and chose not to fight. So Athens and a few minor allies were facing the Persians alone. And to everyone's complete astonishment, the Athenians win the Battle of Marathon. And according to legend, the Greeks sent a runner back to Athens to announce the news, and soon it was proclaimed this Athenian victory. And after he does this, he dies on the spot. And the distance from Marathon to Athens is 26.25 miles, which is why that is our marathon racing distance today. Only 192 Greeks were killed at the Battle of Marathon, in contrasting to 6,400 Persians. This is at least partially because of the hoplite warfare techniques, as we discussed in class, giving Greece the advantage here against the lightly armored Persians. But also there was a lot of outmaneuvering that happens. And as I said, this is a pretty legitimate number because of the amounts of baby goats that were going to be sacrificed in the names of the Athenian win. For 6,000. It actually had installments of years, so they didn't decimate the goat population at the time. While this victory was huge for the Greeks, it was really it was more of a wound and pride for the Persians, because they actually didn't send that much. It was a very small amount of soldiers for the Persians, and it was clear that Darius was going to have to send another army to crush the Greeks utterly. And in this invasion is delayed for almost 10 years, and during this delay, Darius dies. And this gives Athens and Greece time to prepare. And at this time, this preparation happens. Athens finds a new silver mine, and they're bringing more and more money. And all this time, they wanted to divide this money amongst citizens, but instead, Themistocles, who will be the general in this, he goes, wait, we should really be building up, because the Persians are coming. The Persians are coming. He, in fact, even names one of his daughters, like, be prepared for war, which is unfortunate. And so what this results in was going to be the Battle of Thermopylae. So during this reprieve, Athens, as I said, stroke left. They discover a silver mine. They bring in this much money, and Themistocles is saying, wait, we need to invest this. And so the Persians then descend on Greece, and they know it's coming, and the Greeks are forced to retreat. There's no other way to deal with this. Even Athens is fully abandoned, and the Persians sack and burn the city. The Greeks debate their options, and Themistocles argues that the oracle's reference, and this comes back to Greek religion, that the oracle reference to, they actually send someone to go to the oracle, and the oracle refuses to see them. Then they send another one, and the oracle they chase out, and they get a new oracle because they get a bad victory. And so this new oracle delays for a little bit, comes back and says, wooden walls, and everyone's very confused by this. And so Themistocles then references later that maybe the wooden walls meant that they should rely on their navy. So he persuaded the Greeks fleet to gather near the island of Salamis, where they hoped to repeat kind of the strategy, only the Battle of Thermopylae. I missed a section. Sorry. The Battle of Thermopylae, again, invading force. Most of Athens is then burned. But what ends up happening is they go on a march out of Athens, and the Persians are coming, and they know what's going to happen, so they are into a place called Thermopylae, and they realize there's a very narrow gap there. And in this gap, they conclude that, okay, if we plug this gap, the large Persian army can't go through this, and this might give enough time to escape. But the only way to do is if they leave a force behind. And so they look to the Spartans, who are now helping them in the war after the failure for not helping at Marathon. So the Spartans leave 300 of their best warriors in this opening of Thermopylae, as the Persians are descending, and they know they're going to die. In fact, they rub sweet oils around their bodies and comb each other's hair before the battle. And then the Persian army shows up, and apparently they launch so many arrows. One of the Greeks famously said that they couldn't see the sun. They said, great, we will fight in the shadows. And the 300 actually hold off the Persian army for quite a while, and then are roughly killed. The Athenians are on the run during this time, and their city is eventually sacked and burned. But what out of this, Themistocles argues that maybe we should turn to the navy, and they said maybe we should do something like the Battle of Thermopylae. And Salamis is very shallow, and it would be very easy to bottleneck the Persian navy. And they end up doing, as we had talked about, the trimeme, how the ships were too waterlogged and they couldn't go, and it ends up happening that Xerxes, who is the leader of both the Battle of Thermopylae and Salamis, ends up losing. A good The Persian ships, they lose so many, and the Persians couldn't supply their land army, so Xerxes ends up having to return to Persia. At the time of the Battle of Salamis, the Greeks lured the Persian navy out of the street, destroy them, and it kind of ends the invasion at that point. So the aftermath of the Persian War. So after the defeat of the Second Persian invasion, the Greeks were left with a sense of unity, and because Persia was still a superpower, the Greek states formed a mutual defense league known as the Delian League, because its treasures were replaced on the sacred island of Delos. The Delian League starts out as a union of equals, but then later, because of the powerful navy of Athens, it tends to be Athenian-led. And then eventually what happens is Sparta begins to retreat into this policy of isolationism and never joins the league again. And Athens becomes so dominant over the other groups. And so that they in fact even move the treasury out of Delos into Athens, and it starts to break up this unity against the area. Soon, as I said, Greek unity brings success against the Persians, but it breaks down. And in 467 BCE, the island of Naxos wishes to withdraw from the Delian Leagues. The Athens refuse Naxos to withdraw, blockade the island, and eventually force them to surrender. And this incident sets a precedent that that Athens was a military force against its own allies, and so the mutual defense ends up crumbling, and the Athenians end up invading all the other groups, so it becomes the Athenian Empire instead. They are forced to pay tribute to Athens. The treasury is again moved from Delos to Athens, and a series of long walls are built around Athens, from the port of Piraeus all the way several miles away, and they act as a long Athenian. It allows Athens to control the sea, but doesn't allow the anyone to invade Athens because these walls are too thick. Domestically, Athens flourishes and becomes particularly good. They have a wise political leader named Pericles that comes out of this. One of the bad things that happens to Themistocles is after his great victories against Persia, they end up executing him as a traitor, which is really sad. And so Pericles ends up becoming this force of nature for Athenians. He guides the Athenian Empire to become politically stable and successful and economically prosperous. He gets the other states under the Athenian Empire to pay tribute to them in cultural projects. They pay money, as well as the Athens begins to do cultural projects. They do a frenzy of building programs and construct temples and sculptures. And the Athens behavior overall becomes arrogant and imperialistic and feeding resentment that happens among their supposed allies. As a result of the coalition of the Greek states, city-states are centered around Sparta, forms their own group, and this is known as the Peloponnesian League. And so the atmosphere between the 440s and 430s BCE is very much like the Cold War in the 1950s and 1960s of the United States and of the world. You have powerful military alliances, dramatic ideological differences, and Athens was not only a democracy, but it also was trying to export democracy. Whereas Sparta was an oligarchy and championed that, and they liked being isolated. In fact, Sparta ends up not doing coinage. They do bars of gold so no one can carry it in the purse, which is really ends up being the downfall of Sparta in many ways. But this is kind of what ends up fueling this hatred between the Greek city-states, and we'll see that next in the Peloponnesian War, exactly what happens out of this. Thank you.